Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hello, friends. Thank you so much for being here with me today on Learning to Glow, episode 134. We have a really fun episode for you today. If you've ever been curious about how manifestation actually works on both a scientific and energetic level, today's episode will be right up your alley. My guest is Umeko, a mindset and manifestation coach from Nova Scotia, Canada. Her journey is very inspiring, and she now helps people transform their lives using powerful tools like EFT, breathwork, nervous system regulation, and visualization. If you've ever wondered why some manifestation techniques feel out of reach for you, or if you think you're doing something wrong, this episode will give you some real takeaways that you can implement into your life. Umeko breaks it all down in a way that blends science, metaphysics, and real-life tools that you can start using right away. So I hope you enjoy this one. This is such a fun topic. I've been very interested, and I was looking for somebody who could come on and explore this topic and all of the questions that I have about it. And you know, I think a lot of people think this is a woo-woo topic, and it's not. We've touched upon some of these things in the podcast in the past, but I like how we have this all in one episode. It's so fantastic. So let me know what you think. Send me a message. Send it to a friend who is also into these topics, and enjoy this episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show today. And we are going to be talking about the world of manifestation. And I'm so excited to introduce my guest, Umeko.
Umeko.
Umeko. I'm blocked when it comes to saying your name, but it's so pretty. Welcome to our show. And how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited. I found you online because I want to dive into this conversation and this topic. We talk all things wellness on this show, women's wellness, and I love to incorporate this piece because it's so important. Like, our thoughts are important, and women love to talk about this topic. And I feel like we get stuck with the how a lot of the time. So before we get into today's topic, can you introduce yourself, tell us about you, what you do, and then we can go from there.
Absolutely. My name is Umeko, and I am from Nova Scotia, Canada. I am a mindset and manifestation coach. So I am all about bridging the gap between biological, factual, things that are scientifically proven, and the metaphysical and manifestation. That's kind of my little niche area that I love to poke around in. So that's kind of my general thing.
How did you get into doing this work?
So I am a tattoo artist, and I ended up having to step away from tattooing for a while, and I had to kind of go through this phase of figuring out what I was going to do outside of it. Because I wasn't able to tattoo out of my studio, we have to add like a whole addition on in order to follow the regulations that are now newly put in place. So it really threw me off the rails for a bit. And I went through like a phase of feeling like super lost, really confused about what I was supposed to do, and, all that kind of stuff. And then I ended up downloading Mind Valley. I don't know if you know that app. Yeah. So I ended up stumbling across that, and I downloaded that and was taking some of those little like coaching courses that they have in there. And that was my first introduction into coaching. I had never even like heard of it before. And so I was like, what is this? Like, this is like what I want to do. It was so fascinating to me. And I had taken Regan Hillier's manifestation course, and like, it was so good. And it was just super inspiring. And so that's actually what kind of started the entire situation, which all transpired about a year ago now.
That's so fun. I love it. It's fun when one door closes, right? You have to kind of figure out your new passion and what you're going to do moving forward. So first of all, I want to ask, what do you think manifestation is? Like, what does it mean to you? Because I know a lot of people have sort of their ideas of it. A lot of people think that it's completely like woo woo, and there's so much to the word that is maybe misconceptions and different things like that. But what does it mean to you?
So, in my interpretation, manifestation is your natural ability to be able to create your life. To be able to draw in the energies that you want to align yourself with the things that you desire. And so many people, I find that there's kind of three different types of manifestors. There's the people who have no idea that they're manifesting. It's just they're living life, but they don't realize what it is that they're doing. And then there's the people who are, kind of the forceful manifestors, which I was for a very long time, where you just kind of go at it with brute force and you like make it happen and you control all the ways that you put the things in the box to make the thing happen of whatever it is that you want. And then we have the flow manifestors. So the people who allow it to just, okay, I know what I want, but I'm going to allow the universe to show the way or figure that whole aspect out, which takes way less energy and effort on your behalf. And it is way more the way to go. So, yeah, it's definitely all about your ability to manifest what you want in your life.
I love that. I think we all want to get to the place where we are the third type of manifester and like having the flow. And I think that a lot of it is letting go of the number two manifester, which is all the control and thinking that you have to do certain things. I want to get into like some of the nitty gritty, but I've seen online, you talk about nervous system regulation and how that's essential for manifestation. And does that play a role in when you're trying to achieve that third type of manifester? Tell us a
Oh
little
my
bit about
gosh.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, it varies person to person. But, you know, being able to recognize and realize the patterns that we have within ourselves that is blocking us from being able to actually get what we want. It's one thing to have the conscious thought of, oh, I want this thing, I want that more money, or I want that perfect relationship, or I want that, health goal. But it's a whole nother when you realize that most of the time the reason that you aren't able to reach that or you have struggles to get there is because we have some kind of a blockage within our own nervous system or in our belief systems. So that's where a lot of kind of the walls that you hit when you're trying to make something happen, but it just seems like it's impossible. Most of the time, that's where it's sitting, is in the nervous system or in your belief systems.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard different people who talk about manifestation talk about things being stuck in the body. It's like there's a disconnect between our brain and our body. So when you talk about nervous system regulation and things like that, how do we, first of all, how do we know if we're stuck? I mean, I think a lot of this is like unconscious, right? Like we're not even aware of some of this. So how do we become aware of what might be stuck in our bodies or, different thoughts that we're having that we don't want to have? Because I've heard saying you're manifesting all the time, even if it's what you don't want.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. So, the very first thing is to realize when you think of what it is that you want, what is the feeling that's actually happening in your body? When you think of it, there's like that moment of feeling like, oh, that would be exciting, right? But underneath that initial, like, oh, that'd be nice, then where does your emotion sit? Because a lot of the time, what ends up happening is people, they're like, oh, yeah, I'd really like to have that new car. But then their focus, they have it for that split moment that they're like, that'd be really nice. And then the rest of the time, they go, oh, look at this piece of crap car that I have now. Oh, this has its stains, it has some dings, it has this. Oh, I just wish I could have that new car. I wish I had that new car. And then what your energy is saying is, I don't have a new car. I'm not going to be able to have a new car because I'm lacking. I don't have it. I don't have it. And that's then what you're attracting. So you don't end up with the new car. And so really starting to assess, okay, what are my emotions actually saying? Because our emotions are our frequency. And, everything in the universe is created at a vibration. And so when we tap into and start to realize what frequency we're actually giving off, then you can see where you're holding yourself back. So if you think of what you want and you think, oh, that would be exciting, but then your stomach goes, well, you're like, oh my gosh, the idea of that actually scares me, or the idea of being seen freaks me out, or I feel too vulnerable to do this. When you start to see where those fears are coming in, that's how you can start to uncover, oh, I have a block there. Oh, there's something there that I'm afraid of. There's something that's not sitting with me correctly. So my nervous system is actually protecting me by keeping me where I am because I'm used to this. I know what this entails. I know what my responsibilities are here. But in that new scenario, I don't know. Oh, I have a bigger payment, or oh, I have these different responsibilities in this job, or, and so we keep ourselves stuck because it's comfortable, because it's safe, because it's known in our nervous system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I think it could be like if you want to start a new business and you're like, okay, that is so cool. That's what I want. But then unconsciously you're like, but then I'm going to be working all the time. And what if it doesn't work? And so like, that's like a contradicting emotion and feeling, and you're putting off a different energy than you want to be to get the thing that you want. So then you do stay stuck. So
Yes.
when you're trying to discover how do you discover this? Like, how do you figure out those that you are having those thoughts? Because I don't think a lot of people even realize that they're living in that way. I think becoming aware of this stuff can be challenging in the first
Yes.
place.
Honestly, it's the hardest part, is becoming aware of it, because you can't change what you're not aware of, right? So it really is about just starting to pay attention to yourself, because when something happens and suddenly you have a strong reaction to something, something has upset you, or something, has made you angry, that is information for you. Start questioning, oh, why am I responding that way? Why do I feel this way? What belief systems do I hold that are making me react like this? And are they actually serving me, or is this something that's a hindrance, or something that's not actually beneficial for me? So it's all very much about becoming curious. Curiosity is absolutely key when it comes to uncovering your own limiting beliefs and your own fears and all that kind of stuff. It's all about starting to just question, because so often we never question our minds, right? We never really question these beliefs that we've had unless we deliberately start to do so. And we'll just believe whatever the heck it tells us, even when it's totally not true. And it's such a important thing to look at when we're older, because unfortunately, the majority of our belief systems are actually put in place by the time that we're 7 years old. And the problem with that is that as children, we do not have logical brains. We operate from emotional brains, meaning everything is about us, right? Even situations that are not about us, we take it personally. So it's so important, because we can end up with all sorts of whacked out belief systems from situations that didn't even should not have even bothered us, basically. And if we never go back to go, oh, wait, that's not actually what happened there, now that I'm an adult and can look at that situation, if we never go back to check on these beliefs, they can wreak havoc in our lives later on for no reason, really, for no good reason, just the fact that we never questioned it. We just figured it was true.
Yeah, I know. The woman that I love that really taught me how to question thoughts and beliefs is Katie Byron. I don't know if you've heard of her before, but she is, and I've mentioned her on the podcast because she's so incredible. But, that concept of being able to question your thoughts and ask if they're true or not, and really try to figure out, this is just like an unconscious, like, I think a thought, I believe that it's true. I've had it 100 times, a million times before. And you just keep going with it. So I think like what you said is so true. When we have something that comes up, whether it's like you said, anger, or maybe it's jealousy, it's like an invitation, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to talk about jealousy, because I think a lot of times when you see something, and I see this online in comments when you go to social media, right? You see somebody post something beautiful, they're on a nice vacation, or they have a new house or a new car, and the comments are like, well, it must be nice, or there's a
Mm.
lot of bitterness, there's a lot of like jealousy. And I wonder if having that thought process can that just block you from, I mean, you're basically saying, I don't want that when you have that attitude instead of being like, oh, I'm feeling like a little bit of jealousy. Maybe that's an invitation to, I might want that for me. And that's okay. Like it's a good thing. And then you can kind of decide, oh, why do I have these feelings of jealousy? What is coming up there and how can I change it so that I'm able to receive more? Like, have you ever talked about jealousy and like things like that, the emotions that come up with other people getting what you might want?
Absolutely. And I think that's something that every human has experienced at some point or another, if not a lot.
Yeah.
We are brought up to kind of believe that there's like a limit on everything, so we think that if somebody else has that thing, that means there's less of a chance we're going to get it. And that's where that kind of like power struggle comes in, that it's like, ooh, they have it, that means, I might not, there's less of a chance of me getting it, so that I don't like that. But that's actually completely inaccurate and not true. One of the laws of the universe is that there's actually no limit to anything that you imagine, because you are the creator of your own universe, your own world, your own reality. And when we look at, it's so funny because so many people are very aware of the law of attraction. That became like a big thing from the movie The Secret and all that stuff. But there's actually 10 laws of the universe. And one of them is the law of abundance. And that states that there is an endless amount of anything and everything that you want. So the idea that if somebody else has it, there's less of a chance of you getting it is actually completely inaccurate and is just a part of our societal system to keep people small. It's just a mindset to keep you in that box, the box that you're creating for yourself.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. I remember when The Secret came out, and that was like the big thing. And I think that was in the late 90s or something. And then a lot of people tried it and then it didn't work and they said this isn't real. Oh, and before I ask this next question, I love when we were talking about the jealousy and how things come up and we're like, oh, there's not enough, like I'm not going to be able to get that or whatever. Whenever I get that feeling or when I see something that I want, I always say, and that's for me. And that just like, it helps you go, oh, like I could have that too. Like there's no limit, like you said.
Mhm.
But I would love to talk about like how there are misconceptions with this world and like this topic, because people think, oh, it's just positive thinking, it doesn't do anything. Like what are other misconceptions that you've seen that people have when it comes to this? And why doesn't just positively thinking work? They didn't say that was all that it took in The Secret, but I think that was everybody's takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. And this ties right back around to kind of our original discussion of being like the nervous system and everything,
Yeah.
just because you can consciously think, oh, I want to be a millionaire, or I want to buy this brand new snazzy car or house. You can consciously think that all you want. But if you don't actually back it up with processing what it is that's actually blocking you from having it, what is it that's prevented you from getting that already, then it's not going to come to you. You have to do the inner work. There is no way around it. There's no shortcuts. There's no, tips or tricks. It's really just like you got to do it. And that's that. And, you need to figure out, what are the blocks that I have? Where am I holding fears? Where am I holding myself in limitations? Where am I holding myself in, these bouts of jealousy? So I'm attracting this negative thing rather than going, oh, I love that for them. I want that too. Instead of being able to go there, when we realize that we're, vibrating or giving off negative emotions, that's us sending those frequencies out to the universe. And so then the universe is like, oh, that's what you want, okay, we're
There's more
basically,
coming. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's like we are walking, talking radio frequencies, radio towers, basically, right? And it doesn't matter what you're consciously thinking if you don't deal with what's actually underlying, what's actually happening in your frequency. Because I could be in an absolutely foul mood and be like, oh, I feel great, this is fine, life's great, but feel horrible. Then the universe does not care what you say, it cares
Yeah.
about your energy.
That's really important. I love that. So when you are new to this and you're like, okay, there's definitely a disconnect between what I'm thinking and saying, consciously and how my body is feeling and how my real emotions are. What's a tool that somebody can start with to get in touch with that and get into their bodies? Because this isn't like common knowledge. Like this isn't something that's just innate in us. I think we need tools to help get into this, especially so, with step one, we're becoming aware, okay, there's definitely a disconnect between what I'm thinking and saying and what I'm actually feeling emotionally. What is a tool that we could start with to help better understand like how to merge the two?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, there's so many tools out there now, so many things to be able to, try out. And that's the thing, is that it's not like a one size fits all sort of thing. Everybody's a little bit different depending on what their experiences have been and the things that they like. And if they're, more of a reader and writer, or if they're a painter or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. So there's definitely a few different things that come to mind. That, of course, journaling, classic. When you do realize that you're having these negative emotions coming up, you start questioning it and really journal through it. Try to dive in and dig into what it is where is that feeling actually coming from? Why do you feel the fear for that? Why do you feel jealous of this? Why? And then, of course, there's like, have you heard of EFT?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the tapping is amazing, because that really connects like the body and the mind. So often we get really caught up in just the kind of the mental cycle of trying to figure things out and just dealing with straight like thoughts and that kind of thing. But we are a whole being, and we have to address the entire body. And so EFT is one of those really great ways to be able to process and kind of tie in somatic practices with it. That's a really beautiful method. And then there's all sorts of just like natural soothing practices that people do without actually even realizing it. Sometimes you'll notice that a lot of women, they really love to like, touch their hair and stuff, especially if they're feeling nervous. A lot of times they'll do that, right? And that's actually a method of self-soothing. Like giving some kind of like a scalp massage is extremely beneficial for your nervous system, doing that kind of thing. And then there's all sorts of stuff. Like I remember when I was starting to learn about these techniques, and I was just like, oh, I already like do some of these things. There's like the classic, like, if you're kind of not feeling so good, and we'll rub our arms, that kind of thing. Doing like the bilateral stimulation as well, the butterfly hugs, where you tap on either side on your shoulders or on your arms. And what that's doing is it stimulates both hemispheres of the brain, so it actually brings it back into coherence. Sometimes when we're really like activated through emotions, we kind of like our brain waves are kind of like all over the place, and it kind of helps to soothe and bring it back into more of a rhythm. So those are a few things that you can kind of like hone yourself into, to help bring you back down. What was your original question? Sorry, I feel like I got off on a tangent.
No, you didn't. No, it was about tools. Like, how do we
Yeah,
start?
tools.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So those are some really great methods of, trying to sort of self-soothe in these situations to help you to connect and try to dig in. Because, when we do start doing a lot of this digging into yourself, it gets pretty uncomfortable.
Mm.
It's part of it. So those are definitely some really simple ones. And a lot of the times, even just, there's the breath is something that's so important. Like the breath is the key to the nervous system. And, I feel like a lot of people really don't realize just how powerful it is. A lot of the time when somebody's like, oh yeah, just like, try breath work, that kind of stuff, people are just like, whatever, like I'm not going to do that. But don't knock it, because the breath is the cusp between our autonomic nervous system and like our somatic nervous system. So the things that we can control, like me moving my arms around and that kind of stuff, versus like digestion and heart beating and, all that kind of stuff. Our breath is something that happens automatically, but we can actually control it, right? We can't control our bowels and that kind of stuff, right? Like you can't do that. So it's that beautiful line in between the two different kinds of systems within our nervous system. And so, just starting to look into, I mean, there's so many online that you can find for different breathing practices. And so those are, major, major tools to look into, that you can do things within like a few seconds to kind of like rein yourself in.
Yeah, breath work is so powerful. I feel like it's funny when you said that, like, oh, people roll their eyes and they hear it because they hear it. It's almost like in the wellness space of like people talking about protein. Everybody's like, oh, let's not, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
I've heard that so many times, but there's a reason why. And if you're feeling stuck and you are interested in learning more about this, like it's a great place to start because of all the reasons you said. There's so much scientific data about it. There's guided breath work. I mean, you can be a complete beginner. I love Insight Timer. There's like a million different guided breath work practices on that app. It's free. And YouTube and all the things, or just even just sitting and, breathing in for 4 seconds and holding it, or, the box breathing. There's so many different ways,
Yes.
and what an impact it makes on our bodies. So I think that's a great place for people to start. Where do you think, like, for the more, I'm not going to call them frivolous because I would say they're more fun, but what do you say about all the manifestation fun tools like people talk about online, vision boards and a lot of the stuff that they talked about in The Secret? Like, what do you think about all of those little rituals and different techniques that are more like not for regulating the nervous system per se, but more just like having a vision for what you want in your life?
I think they all definitely have their place. Like a lot of those tools, they can really help you kind of focus in on what it is you want. Like vision boards, they're just like, they're so fun because, first
Hmm.
of all, it kind of connects you back with just like being a kid and making a collage. And it brings out that sort of like that childlike energy, which we could all use more of.
For sure.
So I love that. And it really helps to have those visual aspects to look at and go, yeah, I want that, especially for people who have a hard time with visualization. Like it's not necessary to be able to visualize amazingly or anything, but it's definitely very helpful when you can kind of really get into the picture of what it is that you want. The more senses you can connect to it, the better, kind of thing. Because you have to sort of embody what it is that you want before it actually comes into your reality. And so the more that you can connect with that, the better. So, like, really, any of those tools work great in their own way and for different people. Again, right? It's like there's such a range of different strategies that you can use, and some things work better for some people and other ones work better for others. So yeah, love vision boards. And I feel like there's so many exercises out there that are available online and that kind of stuff that can just help you really tune into that. Because getting clear on what it is that you want, I feel like that's like one of the main things, besides getting over all of your like blocks and everything, getting clear on what it is that you want so that you can really hone in on it. And I think those work great.
Yeah, it's almost like, what we talked about first should come first if, possible,
Yeah,
because that's like the deeper work and that's the stuff that's going to help with your signal and your frequency and your energy. But then I think it's what you said is so true. It's fun. It's like anything that kind of helps us see what we want or like know. I'm the type of person I'm like not very specific. I don't care about the details. Like I know there are some people who are like, it has to be this, and it has to be this color fence, and it's got to be this color and this design. And I'm more like, I just want to feel like it's more of a feeling that I go after. And I'm maybe it's because I'm just not detailed oriented in a lot of ways, but I'm very like, oh, it's fine. Like I don't care about all the details. But I know there's a lot of people who do, and I think that they would probably really enjoy like the vision boarding and things like that. I know what I like when I see it, so I do think it's helpful for everybody to get an idea of like the things that they want, or like a trip, or like if you're moving, it's like the type of area that you want to live in. Like it is fun to kind of do your research and then vision that. I actually really love visualizing things. Is that a practice that you personally do at all?
absolutely. Yeah, I am very much. I'm an artist, so I
Yeah.
love doing all sorts of visualization stuff. Yeah, and using any of your creative forces to be able to kind of to connect into that vision.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit for people who've never done visualizations. I read a book that I wish I'll try to figure out the name of this book and put it in the show notes, but it was this man who wanted to move to Italy. And so he was using the tool of visualization. And so he went on Google Maps and like found the exact neighborhood he wanted to live in. And then he would go sit outside with a cup of coffee, and he like found a coffee shop on Google Maps, and like that exact coffee shop would shut his eyes with the coffee in his hand every morning and like would visualize him sitting in that coffee shop in Italy. And like 6 months later, he was in that neighborhood living in
I
Italy.
love that.
I do too. I was like, that is so cool. I think this was last year I read the book, and then I kept hearing visualization, visualization. And I'm like, okay, this is a really great tool. And so I'm using it as I'm about to go on a trip, and I'm visualizing like a smooth flight. I don't like to fly. So I'm like visualizing the flight. I'm visualizing the freaking plane on the ground landing at my destination, all of that stuff. So tell us a little bit about maybe some tools or tricks for somebody who wants to incorporate this into their life but hasn't done it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, visualization is such a powerful tool to use because our brains don't actually know the difference between imagination and reality. So, that is such an incredible thing because you can actually prime your nervous system and all the things that have been holding you back. You can actually prime it through visualization to be open to accepting what it is that you're trying to bring into your life. So, yes, for physically, like actually doing the visualizations, trying to bring in as many of the senses as possible is super important. So, if you're sitting at the coffee shop, it's like, what do you smell? Like the pastries and the coffee, and, what do you taste? Like all the sweetness and all that. And, what do you see? The people walking by, and maybe they have like flowers in a pot, and, bring in as much detail as you possibly can and really sit in it. And then combining that with the five senses, adding the sixth sense of the feeling. How are you feeling in that moment? That is the most important of all of them. You have to feel what it's going to be like. And, honestly, like if you can't because you're like, I haven't done it, how the heck am I supposed to know what it's going to feel like? Just feel gratitude. Feel gratitude and be like, oh, this would be so amazing. How amazing would this be? And just try to focus in on that if you can't quite connect the actual feeling.
I think that we haven't really mentioned gratitude, but I feel like that's another word where people might roll their eyes. It is so important. I think tell us a little bit why it's so important for gratitude when we're practicing manifestation, because I think it might go back down to that feeling, the feeling part of it. If you're manifesting something or trying to manifest something from a place of, like you said, the car example, I can very much relate to this because I had a car for 12 years and it did have a stain. It did have a cut in the seat. And there were thoughts of like, I'm kind of sick of this car. But then I was also like, this is the nicest car I had ever had. I was so grateful for this car. This car was a car that got my babies around in their car seats for years. So talk to us a little bit about that gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude. Oh, it's like you said, I feel like it's one of those words that kind of makes people cringe because it's so overused, but
Totally.
yeah, right. But it is so true. It is the power behind everything because realistically, when you're looking at and thinking about having what you want, it is gratitude underlying everything. You have the excitement and the newness and all of these things, but underneath it is gratitude. And if it's not from gratitude, then generally it's from lack, right? So when we're trying to connect to that, like, oh, I want this thing, and we aren't coming at it from like the feeling of, oh, if I had that, how good it would feel. And, I'd be so happy and proud or whatever it might be. If you don't have those positive feelings towards that, then you're most likely feeling it actually like from the lack of the thing and feeling, I don't have it yet, or I'm never going to get it, or, and so I feel like it's just sort of the underlying baseline for really being able to come from the right emotional state to try to pull that in.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so important. I think that's another great tool that people can use, to start really simple. I think that's why that gratitude journal was so popular. I had like 3 of them. Just to bring the feeling of 3 things that you're grateful for every morning is like what a way to start the day, such a powerful way to start the day and just to get you in that state, because that's sometimes, our default is waking up and being like, ugh, like, it's so easy to do that when we're, it's Monday and I have to do all these things and, so I think maybe that's such a small thing, but can have a big impact on your day. So maybe you could share with us, like, how do you do this with your clients? What is your process? And tell us a little bit about what your coaching program is like for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I have such a mixture of people who come to me as clients, which I love. And so I have the people who already have a bit of like a spiritual background and like have a little bit of knowledge about this kind of stuff. And then I have people who have absolutely no experience in that realm whatsoever. And I love it because the way that I love to move through coaching with my clients is I always begin with all of the biological and factual side. So I teach them about what's happening in our bodies in regards to habits that we have and the belief systems and where they come from and what, the different parts of our brains are doing. And I love telling them all of this and filling them in that, because then we move into the metaphysical side and they understand on a totally different level why we do what we do. Even for the people who are spiritual, it's really fun to go through because they're always like, oh, well, now that just like hits home on a whole new level. They get so excited about it because they were like, I knew it worked, but I didn't know why.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. So yeah, I kind of start off with like the whole factual biological and then move into the metaphysical, the breath work, why you do that, why affirmations are so powerful, all this kind of stuff. It just makes it all make sense in a whole new way that a lot of people don't realize. And we're so blessed to live in a time right now to that science is catching up to all of these sorts of things, right? Because it's stuff that like religion and like spirituality has known for so long, but there was no like facts behind it, and so many people are really caught up in that sort of mindset, which is fine. But it's really nice to start having those worlds kind of merging together.
It's good for the skeptics, for people who are like, this isn't real. No, it is real. And then, that's your foundation and that's your basis. And so then, you can build upon it. Then maybe the visualization doesn't seem so kooky at the end of it because you're like, oh, okay, this is why we do this. This is why people have been doing this for who knows how long. Yes. So I think this is so fun. I appreciate you for coming on. Please tell everyone where they can find you. And then I'll leave all of it, also your links in the show notes.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under Metamorphosis Healing Arts. So you can find me on any of those platforms. And I do have a website as well. And I'll get you to link that, I guess.
Yeah. Send it to me.
Perfect. And so all of those methods, I'm all over the place.
Okay, perfect. I know, me too. Well, thank you again. This has been amazing.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.